I feel that that's possible now with the recent advances in kind of science and also all the technologies that are available and this kind of accumulated understanding about what we can do to enhance the energetics of the body, even at the most fundamental cellular level, like how much energy the mitochondria are producing. We can improve on those energetics, and then that just has beautiful downstream effects that really affects the rate of our aging.
This is Doctor Talks.
Well, welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Rudy Mueller, and I am here with Dr. Beth McDougall. Thank you for coming today, Dr. McDougall. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to this interview.
Me too. Yeah.
All right. So I would just like to introduce Dr. Beth to everyone here. You may not know her. Some of you may know her. She is a internationally renowned integrative physician specializing in multi-factorial degenerative disease. So really looking at all of the different factors that contribute to degenerative disease and then how to address those root causes. She's the co-founder and medical director of JYZEN, JYZEN, which is a cutting-edge biooptimization facility in Mill Valley, California, right outside the San Francisco area. A pioneer in the orthomolecular nutritional medicine and European biological medicine, Dr. McDougall was among one of the first physicians really trained in functional medicine back in like the late 90s. Is that right?
1998.
That's hard to believe. The longevity is working out well for you. So her expertise is really in the biophysical diagnostic and therapeutic techniques based on the quantum principles, which I'm really excited to dive into because that is not an area that we operate in from our practice perspective. So learning a little bit more about how you're utilizing the bioenergetics is going to be really cool. And I look forward to this interview. She also works, besides at JYZEN, is the chief medical officer of Kenobi, which is a fund supporting health companies focused on energetic diagnostic and healing technologies. She also serves on a couple advisory boards for the Energy Medicine University and the scientific advisory board of the Resonance Science Foundation. So welcome, Dr. Beth.
Thank you so much. Happy to
Y-
be here.
Yeah, that's great. And so really, I mean, when we think of longevity, there's different definitions of longevity, right? In conventional space, maybe, a little bit different in the functional medicine or the longevity medicine space. So just to start out, pretty easy here. How do you approach longevity, or what do you think about when you hear the term longevity?
Well, to me, I think about lifespan, but also health span,
Mm,
trying to help people to not only extend their life, but to live a vital life for their even an advancing age. And I feel that that's possible now with the recent advances in kind of science and also all the technologies that are available and this kind of accumulated understanding about what we can do to enhance the energetics of the body, even at the most fundamental cellular level, like how much energy the mitochondria are producing. We can improve on those energetics, and then that just has beautiful downstream effects that really affects the rate of our aging. And I think that at this point in our history, we can actually reverse biological age. And so even though we'd be advancing chronologically, we can reverse biological aging and feel more youthful at an older age than we did even 10 and 20 years prior.
yeah, it's beautiful. All right. So, yeah, with the biological age, I think that's very interesting that, you're correct that we can really transition the age, and it's not the chronological age that matters so much, it's the biological age. And so one of the people that we're interviewing is Ryan Smith from True Diagnostics, who's really pioneering this kind of area and really looking deeper into the clocks, right? And looking at how can we reverse that biological age, what interventions are impactful for it. So you mentioned the mitochondria as being an important area. What are some things that you're doing with the mitochondria to try to help impact that reversal of the biological age?
Different types of therapies to stimulate mitophagy,
Mm,
which is where the body will edit or repair or replace damaged mitochondria and birth new mitochondria. And there's so many ways of approaching that. So one way that we do is NAD IVs. So intravenous NAD has been shown to stimulate mitophagy. and it's also an energy catalyst, and it just improves energy production in the mitochondria. The other thing that we do that is a little less well known is we do intermittent hypoxic therapy. And so we have the cell gym system here, and one of the largest installation of cell gyms in the country of 6 of them. And what that is where you're lying in a zero gravity chair and breathing oxygen through a mask, and then the coach will cycle you from normal levels of oxygen to mild hypoxia and back 4 times in a 40-minute session. So it's like being at sea level and going to altitude and coming down and going up and down 4 times. And if you do that repeatedly, you begin to release something called HIF-1 alpha. And in 2017, 3 scientists won the Nobel Prize for figuring out what HIF-1 alpha does. It triggers the transcription of thousands of genes that are involved in our body's kind of energy production. So it also triggers genes that are involved in how we utilize oxygen as a fuel and kind of a catalyst for energy production. So it enhances oxygen delivery, it enhances oxygen utilization, and even coupling of oxygen in the first enzyme of the electron transport chain to really improve ATP production. It has also pretty interesting effects on glucose transport and shuttling glucose from the bloodstream into the cell in an insulin independent manner. And that will improve kind of our insulin receptor sensitivity and our ability to utilize glucose as a fuel source for energy production as well. We do some hyperbaric oxygen. We do kind of altitude training where people are doing, fluctuating levels of oxygen, but while they're working out. And then of course supplements. Supplements can be very helpful, like, coenzyme Q10 and urolithin A, and then I find it's critical to both diagnose and then treat, detox chemicals that we're exposed to, because a lot of things are direct mitochondrial toxins. So we know that mycotoxins that are produced from mold exposure are direct mitochondrial toxins, and so are some other types of chemicals used industrially. So I do testing here where I will send the blood to Europe, and they'll do kind of look at toxins complexed in the cell membranes and the membranes of the mitochondria. And then they'll look at kind of metrics of mitochondrial function to see if they're suppressed. And a lot of times with aggressive detox with phospholipid therapy and intravenous glutathione and methylating agents, you can start to both flush and then mop these toxins up and kind of route them out of the body. The other thing that can be really helpful for mitochondria is red light therapy. You know, red light wavelengths and near infrared light wavelengths have been shown to kind of activate cytochrome C oxidase, which is one of the terminal enzymes in the electron transport chain in the mitochondria. And that enzyme can get blocked by intracellular nitric oxide production and by certain toxins. And so I have had really good luck combining the detox protocols with red light, near infrared light therapy. It actually accelerates kind of the detoxification because the light produces a conformational change in that enzyme that literally will kick the toxin off the enzyme, kind of liberating it again so that it's free to begin producing energy maximally again.
You're really addressing the mitochondria multifactorially. You're not only thinking about ATP production, but the membrane of the mitochondria, what toxins are going to be disrupting that, what nutrients are needed for good ATP production along that electron transport chain, and then utilizing different strategies like near infrared light therapy, hypoxia, these different hormetic stressors, right, to try to push and create a little bit of stress, but then we rebound from that stress, similar to, exercising being a hormetic stress, to be able to reinvigorate those mitochondria and restore them through the process of mitophagy.
That's so true, Rudy. I mean, we'd
Yeah,
be remiss to not just talk about lifestyle aspects,
of
changes
course.
that affect mitochondria, like exercise, even just going outside in the morning and letting sunlight wavelengths come into your eyes, like, soon after the sun pressed the horizon, because those wavelengths of light just kind of activate the mitochondria and actually stimulate mitochondrial water production. So water is produced in the mitochondria, and the infrared wavelengths of light that kind of predominate in the early time of day will help to structure that water, and that actually moves those complexes, those enzyme complexes closer together in the mitochondrial membrane, so there is more efficient transfer of electrons down that electron transport chain. So there's so much that we can do, from exercise to cold plunging to sauna therapy to these kind of things, like actually hooking ourselves up with the diurnal rhythm of the for example, like that also improves our hormone balance because you go out in the morning and the first step in steroid biosynthesis happens in the mitochondria. So when you absorb the wavelengths of light, you catalyze the conversion of cholesterol into pregnenolone, which is the first kind of grandmother steroid from which all the other steroid hormones are produced. So that goes to DHEA, which goes to estradiol and testosterone, or to progesterone and cortisol. So you really amp up that whole kind of cascade by going outside.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that is one of the primary things that we should be recommending to everybody that's listening is if you can get natural sunlight in the morning while the sun is rising or close to the time of the sun rising. And so when you're recommending that, are you recommending that they remove glasses, contact lenses?
Yeah, that would be helpful. It would be helpful. And then ideally, you go out with bare feet on your
Yes.
surrounding at the same time, which is great for your cell membrane potential. Yeah.
Yes. So I just came back from Puerto Rico and that every morning went down to that beach, eyes facing the sunrise and feet in the ground doing the grounding. So that's wonderful. Any other lifestyle aspects that you focus on? I mean, obviously, if you're reversing degenerative disease, you're be focused on nutrition. But when we're thinking about longevity, is there anything specific to nutrition that you're recommending?
Yeah. Well, first of all, as I'm sure a lot of your speakers are talking about these days, the slowdown in the metabolism that a lot of people experience as they age is
Mm.
kind of the slippery slope into rapid aging. Like it kind of, as we start accumulating belly fat, we begin to develop more insulin resistance, and then that catalyzes this kind of bad feed forward cycle, kind of like slide into many of the diseases of aging. So it's just absolutely so critical that we begin to impact that at the kind of like the most upstream point possible. And so dietary interventions are critical for healthy aging, and they're different for different people. That's the thing. So we do a lot of testing on people to kind of try to ascertain what would the best diet be for you at this point in your life. And it varies. So we do biometric testing of resting metabolic rate. We do VO2 max testing, of course, insulin, glucose, hemoglobin A1C, and kind of inflammatory markers. We have some specialists within our ecosystem that does lactate testing and the kind of the old fashioned glucose tolerance test, but with insulin at all the different points. And there's some very incredible nuances, like when you look at it with how someone handles a glucose load, and also, of course, continuous glucose monitors. And we just try to pool all that data together and just kind of figure out like what is the right diet for you. But generally speaking, this is more generality now. Most people, as they age, do best with a protein forward diet that still contains a lot of green vegetables and kind of living foods so that you're getting all the life force and the electrons and the vitamins and antioxidants that your body needs to kind of maintain that cell membrane potential and nourish yourself. But the protein forward aspect of the diet is so critical because, as you know, muscle mass is critical as you're aging. And it is, many people say the currency of longevity. And the more muscle you have, the healthier your muscle cells are, the easier time your body's going to have to sink the glucose from your bloodstream into the muscle cells. So we store glucose as glycogen in our muscle cells, and that sensitizes the insulin receptors and then really keeps your metabolism functioning at a higher level.
Yeah. And so really looking at glucose, insulin, hemoglobin A1C are kind of the key blood markers to be thinking about. And then I like that you're doing a glucose tolerance test as well, which you're looking at either, potentially all of these, but a 30-minute window after taking the glucose load or an hour, 2 hours postprandial, maybe even up to a 3 hour, depending on the individual, and then making specific recommendations to the individual based off of their results.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
look at anything else? Like, do you look at genetics at all for trying to pick a nutrition plan? Because you see a lot of these, genetic companies putting out things where we're going to pick the best diet for you, and it's based off of genetics. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't.
Yeah.
'Cause, you can if you bathe your genetics in the bad diet for you, that's going to cause epigenetic changes that are gonna be far more consequential than your genetics. So, it's really about looking at these functional studies. And now in this day and age where we have the ability to wear the continuous glucose monitor and really just take a look at how is your body handling the food that you're eating in real time, and how is that affecting other metrics like your sleep stages and
Mm,
the quality of your sleep, which is, as you know, is so critical for our health and longevity. So to me, the functional studies are so much better.
yeah, beautiful. And
Mhm.
so it seems that, I mean, your practice is very data driven forward. So you're looking at a lot of data besides the CGM, the continuous glucose monitor. For those of you that don't know, is one of those things that you'll see wearing on a person wearing on their arm, or, some maybe wear it on their thigh, that's constantly monitoring your glucose levels. And then you can look at how your lifestyle, whether it be stress, food, particular food, how your sleep is affecting your glucose levels. So are there any other tools that you would put or rank up there with the CGM as providing valuable data, real-time data that's driving your decision making as a clinician?
Body composition.
Body comp, yeah.
So, yeah, having a smart scale at home, I think, not all smart scales are totally accurate, but if you're using the same one and you're looking at how it's trending, I think that can be helpful. And then, of course, periodically doing a DEXA scan or something like that. So you're really, really looking at that and trying to data drive your lifestyle to optimize those metrics.
Beautiful. So I think that when we talk about genetics is a cool piece of information to understand and learn. You may pull some data from there that's valuable, but really it comes down to how is your lifestyle interacting with your genes, resulting in, an elevated glucose level, or, your biometrics or for your DEXA being off, right? Looking at body composition. So cool. I think I really like that you're data driven and really being specific and personalized to the individual.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that data is such a powerful biofeedback tool. I think when I was a really early adopter of Aura Ring, for example, and had sleep trouble for years when I went into perimenopause, like, years ago. And it was so helpful to be able to just pick apart every aspect of my lifestyle and then really prove to myself, like, what it was doing to my sleep quality, what time I ate dinner, what I had for dinner in terms of the ratios of the macronutrients, whether or not I'd exercised that day, whether or not I had meditated that day. So many things would contribute, and I think all of these tools are like that. If you look at your CGM and like you said, if you're stressed, you're going to get different values. If, it's not going to look as good as if you're eating the same food when you're not stressed. Or if you've had a poor night's sleep, it's going to affect your CGM because your body's in a state of stress. So it's is I think so helpful to guide your and modify your lifestyle.
And then are there other things? I mean, so we touched on nutrition, stress. I find that the hardest part, of the part that a lot of practitioners can skip over and that people will miss, is like the mind, body, spirit. What particular things are you focused in on in that area, in that domain?
Uh, Thanks for asking that because I completely agree. I don't feel we can have vitality and a good health span unless we're focused on our mindset and doing some energetic maintenance. in our body. I advocate meditating and doing a body-centered meditation where you're really doing a kind of a conscious scan of where you're holding tension or where you may have pain. And then you kind of spend some time in those areas as a window into where you may have some energetic holding, whether it's from the day before having interaction with someone that was not so savory and you really never did the kind of clearing of that. You may have tension in your midsection, almost like your solar plexus, and you may have been holding that for the last 24 hours. And if you keep accumulating stuff like that without kind of going in, taking a look at it, clearing it out, you eventually could have some translation into a physical problem in that area. So I really advocate doing a full body scan, kind of grounding off energy that once you've really spent some time where you can kind of understand what you're holding there and what it has to communicate to you, you can then ground that energy off into the field of the earth. So I really think it's good to set up a practice where we are energetic beings, where you're anchoring your energetic field into the field of the earth and knowing that we store the reverberations of everything that has happened to us in our field, and sometimes it can cause disruption if we're not kind of doing regular maintenance.
And becoming aware of those types of things can be difficult. So when you say like doing a scan, can you talk a little bit more about what that is specifically? Are we hooked up to something that's doing a scan, or are we scanning ourselves as we're meditating and just trying to find the areas where we're holding tension or the feelings that are coming about when we're in that state of meditation?
The latter, yeah. So
Yeah,
are you familiar with the chakra system?
sure.
Yeah, the chakra system, we have these energetic centers, and there's 7 major ones. There's many minor ones, but that tends to be kind of a repository for storing information. And I really see these as true organs, like they're energetic kind of step up, step down transformers, literally, where we're translating kind of subtle energetic information from the field we exist within and from our interactions with other living beings within this field. We translate those subtle energetic signatures into kind of sonic and chemical language of our endocrine and autonomic nervous system, that really translates into the body. And so sometimes we will store kind of energies in our not only our auric field, but also our chakra system. And so doing a scan where you kind of position your awareness in each of the major chakra centers can be really helpful, where you just sit briefly in each one and it's not like you're thinking about it. You're more of kind of positioning the seat of your awareness there and then kind of tuning in to the energy that's there and what it's there to teach you and what it's about and learning what you need to learn and then just kind of clearing the residue.
So is there a way that you would teach a beginner on how to do this?
Well, someone I could refer people to my book. I wrote a
Oh,
book, your
excellent.
Pristine Blueprint, and I do go through a chapter on this. I have a guided meditation in the book, and it's also on Audible as well. So that's a nice way to get that meditation.
Excellent. Yeah, I think the guided meditation, especially for beginners, is the key.
It's a nice
So
start.
yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
great. So we talked about the data driven. We talked about the a little bit about the mind, body, spirit. So your clinic, JYZEN, really is a bio-optimization center, it sounds like, from, offering the VO2 max to the hypoxic training, talked about NAD IVs, infrared light recommendations. So with your center, is it a multi-practitioner center? If people are out in that San Francisco area, I just want them to get a little bit of a feel of what kind of center it is, or people can travel to you to maybe have you as their practitioner and get served by some of the services that you offer.
Yeah. So JYZEN is an extension of my 26-year practice. So we started JYZEN a couple years ago. and it's a beautiful biooptimization facility. So it has my practice and practice of Dr. Maria Marion, who's a naturopath, the practice of Dr. Brooke Bennis, who is an osteopath that does structural health for, and pain syndromes and joint problems. And then Dr. Harris Maskett, who's a medical doctor that's a sports medicine physician and who also, he and I kind of work together on cracking these metabolic codes,
Mm,
where people are having stubborn changes with their metabolism that really is going to interfere with their ability to age well and live a healthy life. And then we have a lot of experts here. So we have a full biometric testing department that's run by a physiologist named Christina. And then we have a neuroscience department run by Cindy Reynolds. And that is such a lovely aspect of our center because what I find is that it's also critical for healthy aging to look at how the brain is functioning. Some people's brains, I would say a lot of people's brains, are locked into kind of a constant state of fight or flight. Their limbic system is firing 24/7 because they've experienced some trauma in their life, and the trauma can date way back to even birth trauma sometimes. And we can go in a very few short sessions of neuromodulation to kind of calm that limbic system down, which improves the autonomic nervous system balance. And that helps everything that I try to do as a medical doctor, whether it's like lower someone's blood pressure or improve their immune system or their ability to detoxify or, you know, fight an infection or whatever. Then we see people, we do a lot of athletes here, professional prize fighting athletes and NFL players and things like that. And so, we have a lot of people not only with head injury, but repeated head injury that leads to a low voltage state in the neurons. And that does not bode well for healthy aging unless you go in there and actually do things to rekindle the nerve functionality. And so we do a lot of targeted Zeolite on the in the areas of the brain that have low voltage. We do exercise while breathing oxygen, EWAT, and the type of exercise we do because there's been some good studies on brain healing is with the Vasper device. I don't know if you know
yeah.
Vasper. Yeah, Sebastian Wasowski is one of the founding members of JYZEN, and his family made produced Vasper, and Vespers where you're on this kind of cross-training device where you're working with your arms and legs while you have these compression cuffs on your upper arms and upper thighs that have cold liquid going into it. So you have compression, cryo, and exercise. And we do that while someone's breathing oxygen and getting via light. And we do a lot of peptide therapy like cerebrolysin and things, CMAX and Selank and things like that, and MOTS-C to try to really up the mitochondrial function in those neurons and get them functioning again. And we data drive that completely with serial 19-channel quantitative EEG brain maps. So that has been super rewarding to just kind of unwind, chronic traumatic encephalopathy and different types of, brain injuries. And then we also have a integrated bodywork center here. So the reason why we have kind of the whole medical department, the neuroscience department, the integrative bodywork department, and the biometrics is that I just watched how people aged. I've been doing this for so long now, 26 years. I have a lot of patients that when I came out of residency that are still with me today. And so I've been able to watch a lot of people age and notice that people would often either develop a physical health problem, often from these kind of underpinnings that have already talked about, like whether it's the insulin resistance or mitochondrial dysfunction or kind of toxic accumulation that's disrupting cell membranes, et cetera, leading to receptor resistance. But they would develop a physical problem, or they would be so kind of focused on their health that they wouldn't, but then they maybe would have some cognitive decline, or they don't have any of that, but then they would have structural. A lot of people out here are super athletes, whether they're professional or non-professional. And, so you have a lot of wear and tear on the joints. And so people would have, kind of like postural issues or asymmetrical kind of holding patterns in the body that would lead to abnormal wear and tear in the joints, and maybe they would need a knee replacement, and then now later it's a hip, and now it's like spinal stenosis, and they've got a back surgery, and then that leads to something else, and you just watch them snowball down. And I'm sure you see that in your career, but I've seen that so many times. Like, I've just watched people deteriorate in front of my eyes from one surgery to the next. And so we are so committed here to looking at structural symmetry, and during going through functional movements, and again, data driving that. Also, we have run DNA, so we're watching people's gait on a treadmill and when they're running, when they're walking, and looking at how the body is moving. And then if there is kind of asymmetries, we're targeting that with focal and radial shock wave, with deep tissue work. And then Brooke does a lot of regenerative therapies for the joints so that you can maybe spare people these therapies. We do a lot of, PRP and biologics of exosomes and kind of off the shelf PRP and that sort of thing, stem cells, etc. And then the focal shockwave is so great for stimulating stem cell release within the joint tissue and just really liberating the joint so that the body can reassume, appropriate posture. And then we do corrective exercises. We've got 3 physical therapists in our center, etc.
I mean, this is a multidisciplinary approach to health and longevity. And I can imagine that most probably started out coming to you because of some sort of condition, symptom, sign, degeneration. And then you've been able to work with them from their place where they entered to now where you're more focused on longevity. So I don't know if you feel like you've got the ability, but if you would like to, I would love to hear maybe like a case study or an example of taking a person from where you met them to where they are now and implementing all of these different disciplinary approaches that you have at your practice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about a pretty extreme case of a health issue that I've been able to resolve. So I had someone come in who was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. And I had seen
Very
this
scary.
before and helped her with a pretty major problem. So she brought her husband in, and previously, when they received that diagnosis, they asked the doctor that they were seeing, like, "Well, what can we do about that?" And he said, "Nothing, really. You
Yeah.
just need to kinda enroll in an elder care facility and get your affairs in order." So he came here, and I said, "Well, what did you do for a living?" And he was a pipe fitter in the semiconductor industry, exposed to just tons of toxins and arsenic gas and all sorts of things like that. So we did the blood test where I sent it to Germany, where we looked at toxins lodged in his cell membranes, and sure enough, he was loaded with a lot of industrial toxins, as well as heavy metals and even mycotoxins and things like that. And so we began very aggressive detox with the phospholipid therapy and the glutathione and the methylating agents. I balanced his hormones and then turned my attention more to upregulating mitochondria with the NAD IVs. He's responded beautifully to those. We've done a lot of cerebral lysin for improving growth factors in the brain. He's done a lot of red light therapy and of course a lot of the brain training work where we have looked at, his brain. He had like kind of a full encephalopathy in the beginning. And that is not what you see with Lewy body dementia. It was like his brain was suffering like a toxic injury. So I was able to see that from this quantitative EEG and then keep away at the top at the detoxing, and sure enough, just he really regained his functionality. So he was unable to work any longer because he wasn't able, he was having dementia symptoms and was unable to even manage projects around the house. He was unable to socialize because he couldn't keep up in conversations. And then he gradually began to remember how to keep score in pickleball. He was able to socialize again, travel, kinda navigate in while driving in unfamiliar environments, and now he's, like, managing home remodel projects and things like that.
Oh,
He also had the common kind of sequelae and associated problems of REM sleep disorder, where he would act out his dreams. That's very common with different neurodegenerative diseases. That's over now. He, had constipation. That's gone now. So a lot of the common things you see with Parkinson's have actually gone away. His movements also have become much more fluid, and yeah, he's just, and he's still at it. We're still at it. We have a lot of work still to do, but after about a year in, he's really a changed man.
Yeah, and people fail to realize that it's been. I mean, I don't know if you mentioned it. I missed it. How old is this individual when he came to see you?
He's in his 70s.
Yeah, so he's had 70 years or 60 plus years of being exposed to different things, not detoxifying well. And so this damage has occurred over that time. And so it does take time to get a person back, but within a year to have those types of changes is pretty miraculous. And being able to utilize all of those tools in your tool belt and with inside of your multidisciplinary clinic
Mhm.
helped accelerate that process, whether it been peptides or infrared light, understanding the brain, whether it's through a brain map or an MRI. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's just like other examples would be more like someone coming in who's been, an executive and has made it in his career, and he now is just interested in aging well. He wants
yeah,
to
yeah,
enjoy the rest of his life. So a lot of times people will come in and their hormones are an absolute mess. They maybe have had some hormone pellet insertion. The testosterone's through the roof. It's metabolizing into DHT and estradiol, and now their PSA is elevated, and things like that. So I'll kind of fine tune their hormone balance and not just looking at testosterone, but like their adrenal hormones, their thyroid, et cetera, and really paying attention to the metabolism of those hormones, and then put them on a kind of a optimizing rotating peptide schedule for
mm,
the year, as well as do some pretty aggressive detox, because as you said, like by the time you're 60, you've accumulated so many toxins, and they
mm,
lodge in your cell membranes and just really lead to membrane receptor dysfunctionality, and not just insulin resistance, but leptin resistance, and even, where your neurotransmitters receptors are not working as well, and all of that. So it's so important to detox, and then just find that right diet for them, that right exercise program for them, and begin to kind of teach lifestyle science. Like, so we don't do that anymore. It's like Western medicine has unfortunately, kind of really failed us in a lot of ways, because it's just, it's great for emergencies and great for, if you need a major intervention, if things have got, progressed to the point, but it's not helping people to stay healthy. It's not reversing the trajectory of chronic disease. It's not teaching people how to live in a way that it facilitates a vital life.
right, right. Well said. Well said. I think that what you have going on at JYZEN is beautiful, and I appreciate you taking the time to share the case studies as well as your experience today with us. The final thing I want to find out from you is what is your goal for your chronological age? What do you want to reach? What's that age that you want to reach?
I want to live over 100.
Live over 100.
Hmm.
Beautiful.
Yep. It's certainly possible. It's in my great grandmother did, and she was so healthy right at the end. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's the important thing, right? That we started this whole conversation off with. It's about being functional and having the health span to
Yeah.
longevity.
Right. Exactly.
Well, excellent. So, if people are interested in learning a little bit more about you, maybe reading some of your material, you mentioned a book earlier that's on Audible that has a chapter on meditation. And then, where would they find you for JYZEN? If you could give some information around that to help guide people that are looking for more.
Sure. Yeah. JYZEN.com. That's a
All
good
right. JYZEN. All
JYZEN.com, and
right.
follow me on social too, Beth McDougall MD.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, Beth.
Thank you
And
so much, Rudy. It was fun.
likewise, have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to Doctor Talks. We hope today's episode has enlightened and inspired you on your path to optimal health. Each day is a new opportunity to make choices that empower your well-being. For more insights and strategies, subscribe to our podcast and visit our website, www.drtalks.com. Stay connected, stay healthy, and join us next time on Doctor Talks. Real talks from real doctors on the issues that matter to you most.